Hello, everybody. Welcome to my first live series about my journey with Crohn's disease. I am Sherry Lip. I am the founder of Happy Gut for Life, and I am a certified gut health coach, holistic gut health coach. And I just wanted to do a new series where I would start sharing more of my personal journey and what led me here. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1999, so going on 24 years. Hard to believe. I was 25 years old, so you can do the math yourself on how old I am now. Um, but it was an arduous journey, like a lot of people with IBD and autoimmune diseases have. So I'm going to start out by talking about like what happened when I first got symptoms. So it was probably a little bit late in the year before, in 1998, I started experiencing nausea, very, very not bad, but strange. I didn't really feel sick otherwise. I just started to get bouts of nausea. And I wasn't pregnant, which was my first thought, but I wasn't. So I did not know what was going on. And I didn't really go to the doctor right away either because I didn't have any other symptoms. So I decided to not do anything. I just kind of put up with the nausea and tried to eat foods that didn't make me feel sick. So that was in my mind right away, but I didn't have any idea. And like foods that didn't make me sick were not. It was like a cup of noodles at work. Or there was this bagel shop we used to go to at work, and I'd get that. But at the time, those things were kind of comfort foods. So I just thought they were making me feel better. I didn't really know what was going on. So that went on for maybe a month or two. And then one night I didn't really have pain or any other like diarrhea or any symptoms. It was like nausea. And then one night I woke up and I threw up like a whole bunch of times. Just couldn't stop until it was dry heaves, which I'm sure some of you know what that's like. And so I stayed home from work and I was like, I must have a stomach bug. I didn't even associate it with the nausea I'd been having. And so I took the day off. I felt better. I went back to work the next day. Felt a little kind of just off like you do when you're sick. And the day after that, the night after that, it happened again. Probably because I had filled up on food again. And so then I call in sick. So then I'm like, I think I had that call in sick like every other day. It was like that was what was happening. So it was probably that I was like emptying out, refilling up my stomach, then getting sick. So of course I went to the doctor, and she had zero idea what would be causing this. She thought maybe I wasn't digesting food properly. I went on a medication, didn't help. Went to the emergency room a bunch of times. And then and then the pain kind of started to get bad. And then heartburn started really bad. I don't know if that's been a symptom for some of you guys, but that was one of my worst symptoms. Besides diarrhea, was very severe heartburn. Like I couldn't lay flat when I was sleeping. So finally my primary care physician's like, I think this is beyond what I can help you with. So she sent me to a GI specialist. So unfortunately, that GI specialist was not the best. So he didn't think of Crohn's disease or anything else. He didn't really think of any condition. He's like, you're too young for this to be happening. You must eat very bad, as if people who eat bad get that kind of symptoms. I don't I don't think that's that common, especially when they're 25 years old. So he did an endoscopy, and he found some minor ulcers in my stomach, which were really just caused by the acid reflux and really shouldn't have caused symptoms like what I was having. But anyway, he gave me antacid and I felt a little better. But once again, after like a week, I ended up in the emergency room again, and the emergency room telling me, "Hey, you better go see your doctor, and there's something wrong. You got to get it figured out." So I made my appointment back with that same GI doctor, and in the meantime, I went to New York City. We had my boyfriend and I, who's my boyfriend, who's not my husband, had a trip planned, and we decided to go for it. So I went, and I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. I had actually at that point decided to cut out tomatoes. I didn't really know about nightshades at the time. I just knew that they were acidic, and I was having heartburn. So I went to New York while I'm kind of waiting to still figure out what's going on with my health. And most of the time, I felt pretty good there. I think whenever I've traveled on for something fun, I've usually felt good. But it was an adventure in trying to figure out what to eat. They have a lot of delis in New York City. So I went to those a lot and got salads. You can see my little dog there in the background. She likes to hang out with me. Um, so I got I would get salads, and those have always been well for me. Lettuce is a low residue food. Some people have trouble with it, but I've always maybe during severe symptoms I didn't digest it perfectly, but it never made me feel sick. Um, so I did pretty well with that. Avoiding tomatoes was kind of hard. I went to one restaurant where I asked them to not put the sauce on my fish or something that I had ordered, and the waitress said no, that I would offend the chef. So that was my first kind of foray into special diet ordering, and I told her I couldn't eat the tomatoes. I don't want them. Just put it in this on the side. It has to be there. So she went and talked to the chef, and he was fine with it. But the waitress had given me a hard time. But I went to another restaurant a few days later, and they were totally accommodating. They're like, whatever you want, we will do for you. And this was a much nicer restaurant than the other. The one that gave me the hard time was in my hotel. But this one was a fancy seafood restaurant. They made everything plain. This is way before SCD. I was just kind of on the right track already. But they made everything plain for me. And then like my husband had wanted to try one of their desserts. So they made me like a fruit cup. It was really nice. So that was fun. I got sick one time where I just couldn't get out of bed. But otherwise, I was okay. I was able to climb the steps of the Statue of Liberty. And if you've ever done that, you know that it takes a very long time. So if you're claustrophobic, um, and it's something if you're worried about having to go to the bathroom, it can be a little nerve wracking. But I was fine on that. I went on the boat and everything out there. We went to museums. Everything was great except for one day. But on the way home on the plane, I felt terrible. So I get back to my GI, and he's on vacation. This is the most fortuitous thing to happen to me because his assistant, or not his assistant, but his partner in the practice was there, and she was looking at me, and she was kind of feeling around, and I don't know if any of you have had this. If you have a stricture, you know that fluid builds up in your abdomen, so it's kind of like you can hear it moving around, and it'll kind of get gurgly. So that was happening, and she immediately was like, "Well, does anybody in your family have Crohn's disease?" And I was like, what is that?" So she's like, "I think that you need to go to a new doc. Need to get more imaging, and we need to talk about this more." I mean, she hadn't suggested a new doctor yet because it was their practice, but so we ordered imaging. We didn't do a colonoscopy yet, but they did X-ray, and I knew that something was very wrong then because they said that the barium drink that you have to do, that chalky milkshake thing, should pass through pretty quickly. And for me, it took like 5 hours. And so knew something was wrong then. And then the x-ray technician was like, there is a lot of fluid built up in your abdomen. So that same GI who had never thought of Crohn's disease before was like, "Oh, I think that's what you have." By that point, I was upset, so I demanded a new doctor. went through my insurance company and got a new GI, and who was immediately all about treating Crohn's. So my old doctor, my previous GI, calls me and he's mad. He's like, "Why are you leaving me? um, are you mad at me?" And I was like, "Well, you didn't diagnose the Crohn's disease." He's like, "Well, I didn't know you had it." Like, that's kind of his job. But so anyway, I got a new doctor who was he was older. He was very experienced. He had had a lot of Crohn's patients, so we started on prednisone, a high dose, right away, which made me feel great. I did that for a few weeks, and I felt great. But as soon as I tapered, my symptoms came back, and then some. So I ended up in the hospital in the emergency, and they said I could not avoid surgery, which I had been trying to avoid, and but that I was too sick to even do the surgery. Plus, they have to get you all cleaned out. Um, so that entailed, if you've had Crohn's surgery, you might know this, but if you haven't, that entails, kind of similar to a colonoscopy prep, but also NG tube. If you've ever had an NG tube, you know what I'm talking about. But it goes into your nose and into your stomach, and it drains everything out of there. It's kind of gross. I was pretty unhappy about that, but I was also too sick to really care. I also had to do an MRI. And so they actually poured the fluid for the MRI into my contrast, into my NG tube to do it that way. It was kind of a weird thing. I actually did it sitting up. They billed me on this big thing so they could pinpoint how to do the surgery. By that point, I just didn't even care what needed to be done. I just wanted it to happen. I wanted something to happen. So I had the surgery after I think I was in the hospital for 4 or 5 days, and I had the surgery. But after the surgery, I went home in 2 days. So I wasn't. The day after surgery, I had a billion things hooked up to me, still on G tube, IVs, catheter, the morphine drip. So a billion tubes hooked up. And so I had to walk around, and they wanted me to get out of bed, which I did not want to do at all. So they got me to sit in a chair, and then the next day they're like, "You're walking." So I did that. But by the end of the day, I could walk around the whole hallway. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm getting better as on a liquid diet. But they won't take the NG tube out until you have a bowel movement. It's if there's you can't really be dignified. You just have to go with whatever they say because they're talking about this and they're like, "Oh, did you do that yet?" And then if that finally did happen, they celebrated at the nurse's station. You're like, this is such a weird thing. They're celebrating that. But it was because that meant, things were waking back up and I could also get the NG tube out. So that was what I was most happy about. I got that out. And then the next day they sent me home. And then I was like, what now? So the surgery put me into what they call surgical remission, which is that they don't really know what's going to happen. They hope that they got rid of the disease. And of course, they got rid of the stricture, which was scar tissue. So no matter what I did, there was nothing that was going to change that. And so that can happen. I'm one of the people that built a little extra scar tissue. So it built up inside me and caused a complete blockage of my intestine, which was what was making me so sick. I did the normal surgery, recovery, can't lift, and couldn't drive for 3 weeks. But things were getting back on track. I went back to work and tried to live a normal life. But maybe a few months later, it just started getting upset stomachs kind of randomly enough that it wasn't as bad. I went to the doctor and he's like, it can't be Crohn's because, you don't really have all the symptoms. And he's like, I don't think it could have built up that quickly. But he's like, I can't also do a colonoscopy every time that you don't feel well. It's like I wasn't on any maintenance. There was not really a lot of options back then. So I was allergic to mesalamine, also known as Pentasa. So I was on my own and not knowing what to do. Those upset stomachs started to become disruptive to my life, and I didn't want to. I was trying to get my career going. Sometimes I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was trying to do something. And me and my boyfriend had moved in together, and we thought we were starting life, so I was like, I cannot shut down. That is when I discovered Breaking the Vicious Cycle. So I read that book, and I decided that was for me. It was, just dietary change. It seemed extreme, but it also seemed doable. Like I could do something. And so that is where I'm going to end this segment. That was my Crohn story, getting to breaking the vicious cycle. My next part two next week will be about my SCD journey, at least the beginning of it. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.